We've created our letter, selected our data source as an Excel workbook, used field matching to match the fields in our data source with the fields that Word expects to see, and now it's time to actually insert those fields into our letter so that we have data fields where we have text that needs to be variable, changed from letter to letter. This is wicked easy in Word 2010. So we're going to start with our letter, and we can insert fields in a number of ways. First, you can insert fields one at a time here. You'll notice these are the names of our fields that we matched up. We have first, last instead of first name, last name, name of company instead of company, and so on. So we could build this block out by simply choosing all of the different pieces. For example, we could build city, state, and zip by putting in city and a comma, space. We could then put in state and a couple of spaces, and we could then put in zip code, and that would work just fine. Notice that these fields have delimiters around them. You don't want to ever type these in. These were inserted, not typed. However, I can insert the entire address block at one time. I can simply select all of this text and delete it, and let's drop in an address block. The Insert Address Block dialog box opens, and we get to choose how we want our address block to appear. Pay attention to the preview over here. So, for example, if we choose to have a title and we have one, it will be included. If we choose the Randall family, it will put the last name family on all of these. If we don't want a company name, we simply clear the checkbox, no company name. If there was a field match that we missed earlier, you can get right back to that Match Fields dialog box right here. So I'm actually going to choose the full name here. I want a company, and I'm going to say OK, and there's my address block. Now, it would be highlighted, so we'll go clean up the formatting in a little bit. Let's now get rid of this text and insert a greeting line. Right here in the Write and Inserts Fields group, if I click Greeting Line, it opens the Insert Greeting Line dialog box. Don't just insert a first name after the word dear. We want to look at that line as a whole, and there are a couple of reasons for that. First, we get to choose dear to none. We'll keep dear, that's kind of nice. And then do we want a whole name? If we have a first name, do we want a first name? That Joshua would be the first name field. Josh would be the nickname field, and if there's nothing in nickname, it will use first name. So I'm going to choose Dear Joshua, and then here's the reason you choose the whole line. What happens if you have an invalid recipient name? Let me give you an example. You have a company name, but nobody listed by first name or last name, no contact for that company. Well, if all I do is replace the name with a first name, I'll have Dear Blank sent to anyone for whom I do not have a first name. I'm going to say if there is no first name, I simply want to have no greeting line whatsoever. No dear, no anything. I could also have chosen Dear Sir or Madam or To Whom It May Concern. One of those three will usually get you where you want to go. So here's a preview, and I can actually scroll through several of my records here. I'm actually seeing folks from my data source as I scroll through. And again, if I was seeing last names rather than first names in the preview, I could click Match Fields and go attend to that field match. I'm going to say OK, and here's my greeting line. Then finally, I have a field down here that says, thank you in advance for your attendance in September, comma, first name. So I'm going to select that, and we're going to just drop the first name field in right there. Now, if you leave all these highlighted, it's kind of cool because you can then preview the results and you'll actually see them laid out and you'll know what you're looking for. There's John Rollins' letter, Pam Shepard's, and so on. And you'll see we have some things that we need to be attentive to. Not just the highlighting, but the spacing here, but the merge itself seems to be working just fine. So let's go back to the Home tab and let's take care of our spacing. First, let's take this address block and tell it that it's no spacing. We also need then, because the no spacing is a 10-point Calibri and we've used a 12-point through the rest of the letter, so let's just select all of this. Make this a 12-point as well, and let's update our style so that it's all going to be 12-point. And then here, let's just get rid of this highlighting, no color. We'll get rid of our highlighting here, no color. That's looking good. Let's go back to our Mailings tab now. Now, we can choose Highlight Merge Fields to see where all the fields are in our letter and preview the results the same way. The gray is not as pretty as the yellow, but it works just fine. Our document is all ready for mail merge now. We're hooked up to a data source, we've matched our fields, we've inserted our merge fields where we need them to be, and so let's save this. But first, one more thing. Spell check. This has a name in it. That's okay. We're going to ignore it. And it says we might want to not put a space here. We can ignore this as well. There's nothing like an error that you send to all kinds of people because you included it in your primary merge letter. Now that I've proofed this and I feel good about it, we're going to go ahead and save this under a new name. And this is our merge apps letter, and we'll call this final because it's really ready to go. And we'll be using it in the next video. You get a really big jump on creating a simple merge letter simply by using these built-in address blocks that use the fields that you matched up earlier using the Match Fields feature. Use individual fields within the body of the letter, but try to use the address block and greeting line to kick off the beginning of your letter in Word 2010.